Welcome to episode 39 of the Global Exclusive Podcast. I'm your host, Hazard. I'm joined this week by Baros, Muspel, Shadow, Cotton, and Dream. Cotton is once again out of order because she likes to make things difficult. 39 episodes. I have to announce today that this is going to be my last episode as the host of the show. I have stopped playing FFBE and all other gacha games in general, and I've really enjoyed this a lot. But unfortunately, without me playing, I don't feel qualified to continue to have this discussion with you guys as much as I love it. But I wanted to save the best episode for last. I've been working for months to try and get a guest on this podcast and was able to do so. So later in the episode, we're going to welcome Elytra. She is the former community manager for FFBE. I'm sure anyone who's played this game longer than 6 months probably knows who she is. So I'm really excited to talk to her later in the episode. But let's get started. We've got this week Ibara. She is the new Halloween global exclusive unit. And, we want to jump right into her, but I want to say thank you guys, first of all, for letting me be on this podcast. It's been a wonderful experience, and I hope the listeners have enjoyed having me on. And it's not over, though. You guys are going to continue. It's just me. Going. And maybe I'll join for an episode in the future, but we'll see.
But it's not going to be the same thing. I really don't know what the pod is going to be without you, to be honest. I'm super sad you're leaving. But, I understand. Respect your decision. You're welcome back whenever, really whenever.
In the spirit of Halloween, I want to scare our viewers because with Hazard gone, the 5-host pentagram that we've been using to keep Baros contained is now no longer there. So he's going to be a lot less restrained from now on.
I was also about to say that, with the podcast dead gone, who's going to keep Baros in check now?
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Baros has not been in check for at least 30 episodes.
Listen, this is me being in check. You just wait.
Who's going to make a token effort to keep Baros in check now that you are not here?
Muspel will try and he will fail and we will laugh. That's the order that this will happen.
Without Hazard, this podcast is going to turn into... I'm not even going to say what it's going to turn into because you're going to see it in the next episode.
Oh, God.
Of respect for Hazard, I'm not doing any lewd stuff this episode.
Oh, Let's see how long that respect lasts, okay?
Yeah, you're gonna bring me to tears. Dream is not here at the beginning of this episode. He will be here for the Elytra portion, but apparently he slept in. Daylight savings time strikes again, although it should be almost 11 a.m. where he is, or almost 10 a.m. I think it's almost 10 a.m. where he is right now, so it's
Apparently I managed to wake up earlier than Dream, which is an achievement in itself.
I'm impressed, Cotton. Impressed.
Yeah, me too. And Dream probably just passed out from all of his immense shittering the last few days with the NVs just raining on him, so...
True, all those endorphins getting to his brain.
If there's anyone who deserves a great streak of rainbows, it's Dream, though. Just what a wonderful person. I'm going to miss my adopted son.
Rainbows?
Well, it's rainbows in our hearts. I know it's envy now. I don't really care. It's always going to be rainbows in my heart.
So technically, does anyone feel that the envy crystal is less exciting than the rainbow? Visually, of course, I'm super excited if I see an envy, but visually.
I think I get what you mean. Yeah.
It is hard to go from rainbow to... it's cool. You're right, it is cool, but rainbow is just so brilliant when it comes down. It's really, yeah. I kind of
think the envy crystal looks cool, but I don't know, it's hard for me to say which one is better. It's not like the envy crystal is bad.
No, but it's what Hazard said. It's hard to trump this brilliant, multi-chromatic, beautiful crystal coming down. Now it's just this red thing with lightning bolts around it. Yeah.
Speaking of lightning, here's our segue. Let's talk about Ibara.
Dang it! I was gonna say, speaking of red-colored things with lightning coming out of their hands. I like yours better.
Let's put a cap there and not talk about where the lightning is coming out. Okay.
Oof, cotton.
Okay, now it's cotton today. Okay.
Here we go.
I'm just
Well,
preempting
that's all right.
Baros.
So Cotton, no. I am curious. So where would the lightning come from? Like, I'm not familiar with female anatomy,
All right,
but like,
so
where would the lightning come from?
Ibara is a mage, and in her base form, she is a TDH lightning mage, and in her brave shift, she is a TDW dark mage, and she has some killers, and she's got an STMR that like nobody wants but her, and her vision card has a lot of flat magic on it.
Her vision card's great. Like, really great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It's competitive with, or in many cases better than Envy Soul's card. It has a little bit higher flat mag, but it doesn't have like the regular percent magic. It does have TDH on it. So
I think
Yeah, but we know it's all about the flat mag, right?
it depends on the unit. If your unit isn't capping, then having that 100% magic is a pretty big deal.
But at the same time, I
yeah.
think the TDH is also being undervalued because like sometimes because of the 400% TDH, some units might have trouble. I mean,
That's
rarely
true.
will they ever, but because of killers and stuff, that additional TDH actually helps a lot.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the mages were getting preferred TDW. But if you have a mage that wants TDH, then this is definitely very good for them. Well, probably.
I mean, if
very
you
good
look
for
at
them.
current MV mage, like you only have Eric and Ibara, and technically both of them are TDH, or at least part of them are.
Emperor is shocked.
Does anyone know how Saul is when he comes out? Like, is he also the TDH in one stance and TTW in the other, or?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can check.
Because I'm thinking maybe it's just an NV thing, you know? Like, many NV physical DPS kind of follow a similar formula, too.
You know, looking at this
Soul is TDH
vision
both.
card, I know one person who's not going to be interested in it, and that's Dream, because he really needs an attack vision card, doesn't he?
Oh, but he got one, too, because he shittered Axstar.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like you should have seen his pulls on the day of the banner. He pulled an Axstar and Ibara on two separate pulls, and he got exactly what he needed.
Wait, no, but isn't he a few shots short of getting Axa's vision card for now?
You know, Dream is always a few shards short of something, it seems like.
No, but it's not really a problem, right? Because Shard Dungeon soon, TM.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're also going to fix that arena bug too, right? Any day now. Any day.
No, but I mean, we really need to get the Shard Dungeon. That's gonna
yeah.
change a lot about the game if we get it. Also, it would be great if they also remove the RNG from the Japanese version. Not sure they're gonna though. I was talking to Sinzar the other day, and he's explaining, you know, how incredibly fun it is to, because you know it's just like the daily challenges before when you could like re-roll it to get the proper pot. So you would like, you know, it's the same thing, but now you re-roll to get the right amount of drops after you kill the final mob. So it's super fun.
Oh yes.
So let's talk about Ibara's kit. I know Muspel kind of did a bird's eye.
He did a
view
muspel of it.
Yeah, he muspelled it. So let's talk about, okay, so we're talking about lightning magic damage and dark magic damage in the different forms. But what other kind of utility or what kind of uses do you see out of Ibara? Like, where is she going to shine?
She has no utility. She is just a damage dealer, but she does have good damage, so she's going to see use in DV on lightning.
I
or
mean,
dark stages.
good damage. Okay. You have to realize good damage is Muspel talking about a mage. So Ibara is by far the strongest unit we have right now. And her LB hits harder than Tifa's if properly geared.
As a mage,
saying.
she's going to deal about as much damage as Nalu or Elena or Axstar or something on most fights. She's a lot higher than them on paper, but once you throw killers into the mix, it's not as favorable for her.
This gives me a sense of deja vu. Anyone else?
I mean, this is how Mospel talks about every single mage, so I'm not you.
It's like next time a mage comes around, I'm just gonna ask Muspel, hey, what are the drawbacks of mages in general in FFBE?
So her average damage on paper is about 291 billion per turn. For comparison, Elena is at like 228, Edel is at 243 if you cut off at turn 10, Nalu is at 195. So in general, you should probably expect a physical damage dealer to gain about 50% damage compared to a mage when you're gearing for killers. So all those other units are going to end up probably about on par with Ibara. Maybe a little ahead, maybe a little behind. It'll depend on the enemy type.
Look, but the thing with Ibara is that she is one that is much more reliant on having her own SDMR, especially in her Brave Shift form, where she does actually the most damage.
Yeah, she's also got a small piece of utility here for Dark Visions in that Brave Shift form. She does 300% magic, buffs herself with 300% magic, and 150% human and fairy killer. So that I do see some uses there because fairy killer is still not really that common.
That's very rare, in fact.
Yeah.
And it is once per battle, but I think for Dark Visions especially that could be very useful. Although it does have damage attached to it, so
Yeah. But the thing, okay, so the problem here is that Regina is 200%, right? So like you're probably bringing Regina anyway because that's such a huge.
Well, Regina has physical killers. I don't think she has magic ones for spirits.
No,
does
it's
she?
just
yeah,
physical,
that's
yeah.
true. Regina only has physical. It's Noctis that has both.
you know,
I believe Ibara is the only unit in the game with a with a buff that large to fairy killer, magic fairy killer.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's
What
pretty
did fairies ever do to Ibara to get her pissed like this?
So is Ibara from like Japanese lore or Chinese, or does anyone know?
Japanese, I would believe.
Okay.
Since it's talking about omiyojis and everything.
Okay. I mean, I really like her design. I'm gonna say that. Like she's like creepy, but like not in a Sadako type, way.
Nobody asks what that means. Nobody.
How do you not know who Sadako is? Jesus Christ, Muspo.
all right.
It's
So
the girl from
In
the
any
ring.
case,
It's the little girl that climbs out of TVs from the ring.
oh, interesting. I did not know that. It's funny watching her CG. She has hands, but when you look at her sprite, it looks like just like pointed ends on the end of her arms. Like it doesn't look like hands in her animations at all. Have you guys noticed that?
Well, I would if I had an Ibara, but
is this
you
another
could see
case
it.
where I pulled the unit before Barros?
oh yeah, you shittered one too. Fuck.
No, I didn't shitter. I spent a lot of tickets for her. Okay, that is not counted as shittering.
Okay, sure. Well, you spent like 100 tickets and a couple of 10+1s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
So-
pretty good.
You guys do. To speaking of Regina, you guys know who I pulled the day I quit.
Regina,
I pulled my first Regina.
congratulations.
Thank you for finally being useful. Never again.
Yeah, so okay. Speaking of like random pulls, so when Kaito was released, Muspel hated Kaito so much for good reason. Unit is trash. But like I really wanted to use him, and I pulled one of him randomly, and I'm like, oh please! I dumped so much lapis into his fucking banner, never got him, and now I have 6 of him. It's like karma, right?
Nice.
Take his STMR, stop complaining.
Well, that's great, but hey, wait, hold on. Where did Kaito? Wasn't he like Chinese New? No, he's not Chinese New Year. Where the fuck did he come from?
Yeah, I
He
think
was
he's just
the-
an original.
Summer. What are those called? Precursor type units.
Yeah, he wasn't tied to a holiday or
Oh, he
anything.
wasn't.
I don't think.
Oh, that's sad.
Just random Glex.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping like maybe he would get an NVA, but really, like his NVA would just give him a BS chain that actually does damage, and they would just ignore.
It might have been related to some kind of Japanese holiday, because like the boss when they came out was the lantern, like paper lantern Japanese boss.
It is like a late summer festival, I think. What's related to some sort of like.
Yeah, I was just kind of
festival
hoping
shit.
like if it's an event, then maybe he would get an NVA when that event reoccurs. But yeah.
Yeah.
So Ibara, we haven't talked enough about her LB though. Like nobody is saying just how powerful it is. It's incredibly bursty.
Now, is this the Brave Shift one? That's
Yes.
dark magic only?
Yes, her Brave Shift LB.
Did you all see what Sinzar did? Like Sinzar posted a video. You all listeners, you should go watch it. He actually like OTKs all trials, like all recent trials with Ibara. Turn 1. And that's her power. So Hazard, you asked before, like, what do you use her for? Well, yeah, killing things in one turn is what you use her for.
Good old power creep.
We are seeing a trend with Ibara. Ibara is one of those units, especially when it comes to limit burst, that really needs external support because she does not have any innate limit burst damage buff. She needs another unit to be able to cast it for her, and that is where Yoshi comes in.
Not only does she not have an LB damage buff, she does not have LB damage passives. So she's going to be very reliant on certain gear there. Like, if you don't have Delta Sakura's STMR, that's going to be rough. If you don't have,
Her own SCMR.
Crown Prince Noctis's TM, that's another... I don't know if that's best in slot, but it's pretty good and relatively accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot. There's not a lot of gear that gives magic and LB damage.
Yeah, so to kind of rephrase what I said before, yeah, she is really powerful, but as Muspel kindly reminded, is that you really need to whale her out, though, because, like, just casually gearing her, she's not going to perform on the levels that you see Sinzar wiping stuff with.
Yeah, and in Dark Visions, the fact that she's only dark is, with that kind of burst, is a downside. She does have lightning. It's not going to be as strong, but it'll still be pretty good, but even then, that's only 2 elements, and for DV, that's going to mean there's a lot of fights where she's just not great.
Now, I think Hazard wants to add something else, and since it's his last episode, I guess we should all humor him, right?
Oh god, he's going to talk about War of the Visions, isn't he?
No, I quit that one too. So, I was just going to say, this is the first banner that we've had since NV came out where we have an actual safety net, which I know has been long awaited. And so, what's the safety net? It's 36?
36
40?
And a half?
Yeah, I think
36 and a half?
45 if you want to guarantee EX1, and you're...
40.5k.
40.5, okay. Wait, didn't you say 36 and then 2 10 plus 1s to get enough coins?
Well, at 36k, you are one 4.5k pull away from another free pull. So you do 36k and you get the unit. Then you do another pull and then you do the free pull, and that gives you 2 coins, which you use to buy 20 fragments. And then you combine those with the 30 you get from logins, and then you've got EX+1.
Nice.
Wait, so the 30 login coins actually become useful for something?
I mean, they've been useful for a while, because it means that you get, like with the panel summons or the coin exchanges we've gotten on a bunch of recent banners, it means that you don't necessarily need the bundle to get the unit to EX+1. It's just...
Yeah, but panel summons must go.
It's just that the login fragments are useless if you aren't pulling on the banner or using VIP coins to get the fragments.
Which you shouldn't do anyways, so...
But I'm gonna treat this, being the eternal optimist that I am, I'm gonna say this is a pretty good indication that we're actually gonna get the safety nets, and maybe even earlier than JP got them. I mean, one can only hope, right?
It's a positive step. My concern is that Ibara is a limited unit, and it could be that they're only giving her a safety net because of that. So we'll have to see what the next non-limited banners look like. If they're following suit, great. I still don't love the fact that NB rates in general are so low, because we're looking at like 36k and then 40.5k for a guaranteed EX+1. That's pretty similar to what we paid on average for a 7-star back in the 7-star meta. But you're getting a lot fewer off-banner NVs than you used to get off-banner rainbows.
Yeah.
Because our off-banner NV rate is 0.25%. Our off-banner rainbow rate was 3.5%. So it's less than a tenth of what we were getting in terms of off-banner stuff.
Yeah, and I'm really starting to feel the low rates of MVs, because like now it hurts 10 times as much pulling a unit you don't want. Like seeing an NV crystal open as something you don't want, that really hurts. That hurts on the level of like 1% rainbow rate, and you got a rainbow, and inside it was just another Titus, and you hate quick hit.
Yeah. It's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't mean as much when they sprinted 100 miles in the wrong direction, and now they're taking one step back at a time to where they started.
Well, as you know, Gumi is always one step ahead, but they forget to tell us 100 steps the other way.
Well, so technically also, this means that the game is much more ran by Alim than Gumi, right? Because like a lot of what we're getting is carbon copied from JP. There's not a lot of Gumi touch like enhancements do. They probably killed him in an alley somewhere in Singapore. So, yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily true. I mean, yes, Alum did this. It could be Gumi wants it too. I mean, this increases profits.
Yeah, but you know, we haven't seen a
argue,
GL upgrade
devil's
yet.
advocate here. I'm arguing that it might be Square Enix who is the one leading all these changes, like because they do have the final say on what's going on like with the game.
True.
I wouldn't put it past to Square Enix being the one to force these style changes.
Shadow, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, it's one of those last topics I wanted to do before we move on to the next Elytra interview. If everyone's done talking about safety nets, which
Well, we
I think
should
we are.
be, unless you want us to start again.
No. Okay, so since this is Hazard's last episode, I think I wanted to ask a few questions to Hazard so that Hazard could be like a special guest before we move on to Elytra. And this wasn't pre-planned or anything. I just thought of it like while we were doing it. So it might seem a bit unplanned, but here we go. The first question I want to ask Hazard is like, why did you start the podcast? Because I remember when we had this conversation, you were like a focal point. You got us together into a different Discord channel and stuff like that. So I want to ask.
I thought it was Barrows that started it.
Was it Barrows? I thought it was Hazard who said it first. I remember Hazard mentioning it
I guess
first.
I'll let Hazard answer, but I think it was Barrows.
Yeah, there were two different points where the podcast kind of came about. Number one was maybe a year before it actually started. I had come up with the idea, and actually I think Muspel and Cotton and I had kind of toyed around with the idea, just kind of preliminarily, but not really did anything with it. So time went by, and I think at the time that I originally had the idea, there were some in real life issues going on that was going to prevent me from really being able to do that on a weekly basis. When then Barrows comes along like a year later and kind of rehashes this conversation, and since Muspel and Cotton and I had already talked about this, I think it made it easy for us to jump into it in full force, and so that's kind of how it came about. But the reason I wanted to do it in the first place is because I'm not a very technical person. I don't know a lot of math. I'm not super good at unit strategies. But I felt like this provided a different type of medium for people to discuss the game at a more casual level, because I'm more of a casual player as far as my game knowledge is concerned. And it was just kind of fun, a fun idea. There's content creators out there like Clayik and Hal and a bunch of other guys that you can go to for that more in-depth stuff. But this is just a fun outlet of friends chatting about the game.
And I want to just mention as a fun historical side note, the reason that we finally got it off the ground thanks to Barrows is because Barrows was the one who offered to edit it. That was always the sticking point before, was that we didn't have anybody who was both able and willing to do it.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I really felt that Hazard was the organizer in the sense that he got us all organized and created channels and, suggested topics. Mm-hmm. But kind of, I guess the ignition was kind of that you all were too lazy to actually do editing. And when I suggested that, then it could actually happen.
So my next question is then, what was your
can't I ask a question
moment in the podcast? Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah, actually, go for it.
I'm terrified of what this question is.
I am going to ask a perfectly... Jesus. Oh my God. You think the worst of me. Hazard, boxers or briefs?
Boxers.
There we go.
Depends on what age you are, though. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, okay, if you're 6, I guess, briefs, but...
Yeah, when you're a little kid, I feel like that's more normal. And then, if you're in high school and still wearing briefs, people put you in a trash can. So you got to switch that up.
Yeah, it's kind of like a survival mechanism. You switch those out.
Shadow had, I think, an actual relevant question.
Hey, this wasn't relevant?
Yeah,
okay,
but fine. I appreciate that, Barrows. I appreciate it.
What was your favorite moment in the podcast that you can remember?
Man, there have been some really good ones. I really like that we've had a really diverse set of guests, and also the fact that we have a diverse set of cast members here. You guys all bring something very different to the table, different personalities, different styles of things. So that's been really rewarding for me. I really enjoyed getting to know you guys. I knew Muspel mostly in an adversarial sense before the podcast because of
the rest of us
channel. Yeah, I mean everyone basically hates Muspel.
Yeah, nobody likes
as
Muspel.
far as the Wiki ratings are concerned. But getting to know him on the podcast, I can honestly say that I consider Muspel a good friend. And Cotton and I, had on Discord a bunch of times chatted. And so we'd been kind of friendly for a while, but got to know her a lot better. And then, Barrows and Shadow and Dream, I really knew very little about you guys other than what I'd seen on Discord. And so it's been just really rewarding to become friends with you guys and to look forward to this every week.
Okay.
Muspel had a question.
I have a question. What are you going to miss most aside from Dream's accent?
Oh, man, it's so good. But I can still listen to the accent when I listen to the podcast, so...
Please don't say Barrows' jokes.
What? Do you know Hazard? Like, how long have you known Hazard?
Hazard is the one that sets you up the most.
Yeah, but I want to believe. Okay, I do not burst my bubble. I want to believe it's unintentional and comes from this place of purity, because I see Hazard as like the perfect being. So I'm just gonna say that's why.
Okay. Well, I'll let you think that. That's fine. That's fine. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. But I think what I'll miss the most, to answer Muspel's question, is the community. I love the interaction with people that listen to the podcast, the people that talk about the podcast, the people that criticize the podcast, the people that tell me I'm trash. Like, I'll miss all of it. It's been so rewarding to think that someone who really knows so little and isn't very qualified to do any of this has been able to receive so much. I don't know. Like, I've just felt so benefited from this throughout the community. Just feeling like I can contribute in some way. I never felt like I really had any talent for any of this kind of stuff. So it's been really rewarding for me to learn that any of us can really contribute to the community if we want to, no matter what our skills are or lack of skills are. Baros?
Yes, I have a decent question this time. I promise it's not going to be anything sexual or weird or whatever. So I wanted to know, hey, so I know you've been on a decline of like your love for FFBE, right? And if you look back on the past year, what was the most fun moment you had in the game?
The last year, I thought Telphosaurus was a high point as far as game content is concerned. That was really fun. That was just a new idea, something that was creative and fun. I also really liked Shinryu. That one was really fun too, as far as fights go. Those were really cool. But I've always enjoyed like the holiday units, and I've enjoyed. I really enjoyed the Chamber of Arms. That wasn't in the last year, obviously, but yeah, those are some things that I've enjoyed. I actually really enjoyed Boss Rush too, and they got rid of it, but Boss Rush was really cool.
Yeah, true. I actually forgot.
Yeah,
about
they
that.
never repeated that, did they? Oh.
Yeah, well, and one of the reasons my interest has been waning is because they keep pushing the stuff I don't like to the forefront, and they keep taking the stuff I like out of the game. So, yeah. But ultimately, my decision to leave FFBE and War of the Visions and this podcast is not because of the game, but ultimately just because of the things that are going on in my life and my priorities. I have 2 small children that require a lot of attention and my love, and I want to give it to them, and I want to provide that. And continuing to play a game that requires me to log in daily, unfortunately, it just isn't in the cards for me anymore. It's just too consuming, and my fear of missing out is too high and too uncontrollable that I either have to be all in or all out. And so since I can't be all in, that's why I ultimately made the decision to leave.
But that's the right decision, really, though. That's a lot of respect for making that decision. Not a lot of people can make it. So it's...
for me, it's the right decision. And everyone's situation is different, so I'm not telling anyone that has kids that they can't do that. But for me, in my life...
Oh, no, don't worry. Like, I don't just love my kids, so I just compensate by playing video games. I'm sorry, daughter, if you ever find this on the dark web sometime in the future, I want to reassure you that I do love you. I just also like video games a lot.
Gosh.
Oh, man. One last, I guess if no one else's question I wanted to ask was, what would you like to say to us, the podcast members, the community, and to Gumi/Alim as you step away from this platform? Like, what's one thing that we should remember?
I think the one thing for you guys, thank you so much. You guys have been wonderful. You guys have been wonderful people, and have enriched my life in a way I can't describe. So I really appreciate you guys. To the community, you've brought me 4 years of excitement and joy playing this game. It's been so much fun. And then it's been almost a year doing this podcast, and the interaction's been excellent. For Gumi, I know, and Alim and Square Enix, you guys have a wonderful fan base that really wants you guys to succeed. And I think no matter how much we rag on you guys, it's comes out of a place of love and a place of yearning to want this game to be great. And so I would just say, believe the community when they say this stuff, because we really want it to be great, and it has been great in a lot of instances. So I hope I hope the podcast continues to be successful. I hope you guys continue to have fun in the game. I hope Gumi, Aleem, and Square Enix continue to listen to you guys and to make changes to enrich the experience, because it's worth having. It's been a lot of fun, and I will miss it a lot for sure.
Wow, beautiful last words. Well, last words. Jesus, that sounded darker than it should. Sometimes I just speak before
now we have to take Hazard out behind the woodshed. Who brought the shotgun?
He knows all our secrets, so we can't just let him go, guys. Sorry.
But
don't question it if Hazard doesn't show up next week. Okay, I'm sure he's still alive, happily out there. I'm sure we didn't do anything bad to him, right?
We just sent him to a farm upstate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do want to say, like, as a message, just in general, be good to people. Just treat people with love and respect. Treat them like you want to be treated, because the world's crazy and there's a lot of misinformation, especially in like politics and stuff, and it can really divide people. But just don't lose that sense of who you are and who other people are. Like, everyone's a human being. Everyone deserves respect and love, and we're not perfect. We're constantly revising our rough drafts, and so I would just give people the benefit of the doubt and try and treat people with the respect, even if you don't feel like they deserve it, the respect that you'd like to be shown as well. So I know that has nothing to do with the game, but just in the world in general, it's been difficult to watch, especially this year with everything going down. How hateful so many people have become towards each other, and it really saddens me, and I wish it weren't like that. So that's what I would say is treat other people well.
Amen. All right.
So, I think that does it, unless Barros has one last question.
Nah, I wanted to ask something about your bromance with Nexus, but now you ended it on such a high note, I don't want to ruin it.
That's fine. Yeah, we can cut it out if you want.
No, I was just kidding.
All right, now we want to welcome our guest, Elytra. You guys know her as the former community manager for Final Fantasy Brave Exvius Global Version. We are so excited to have you today. I know I bugged you for months about this, and you've been very gracious to come on today. So thank you so much for coming on, and I want to see how you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, and that I follow the Reddit, and I remember when this podcast first launched and just how exciting it was. And then even now, like, I see that how much fun you guys are having with it and keeping up with it. So I'm really excited to be here and have a chance to speak with you and interact with the community again.
Yeah, we definitely miss your interactions with the community. You are a wonderful community manager, if I may say so, and I think I speak for the whole community when I say that. And I thought you were going a different direction. You said you remember the excitement when the podcast first started, and then I thought you were going to say, and it's been all downhill since then.
Oh, no.
But that's very nice. Well, I'll take that one, too. So, no, but we really appreciate it. I wanted to ask you, we have some questions we wanted to talk to you about today, but I really appreciate the work that you did for the community. And I wanted to ask you, what led you to become a community manager for a video game? Like, how did that come about? Did you go to school for that, or what did you do?
So I actually have a background in marketing, that this is what my professional career has led me towards. And I started playing FFBE and managing a large community. That was as a hobby, that when FFBE was still very new, my friend started a Facebook group, and then she eventually quit playing the game and left me in charge of the group. And at the time, it only had a few thousand members, but then I grew it with the momentum of FFBE and all the new players, that I took this little baby community and grew it to over 20,000 members. And that was what got me into the whole idea of community management. And then I happened to see, because I was like wondering, what's out there, and I happened to search like does Square Enix have any job openings? And then it said Final Fantasy Brave Exvius community manager. So I applied, and I didn't think I would get it. I just thought, well, might as well. I mean, I didn't live anywhere close to LA, but I figured, why not? Just see what happens. So I sent in an application and then didn't think anything else of it. But then a month or two later, they finally followed up with me, and then I had several interviews over the next few months. And the one thing about Square Enix is that their hiring process, because they are a large corporate company, it tends to be drawn out. Lots of decision makers involved, lots of approvals and budgeting things that have to be considered. So it took several months, and I had 5 interviews, all done virtually, or by phone, and then finally got hired.
Wow, 5 interviews? That's
Yes.
crazy.
Process.
And you had never done any sort of community managing as a profession before, is that correct?
No. So I have, like I said, I've worked in marketing, and this is one question that I do get a lot from people who want to break into the video game industry, and they would ask me like how I did it. And the thing with Square Enix, like, they forget that, yeah, they are a video game company, but just like any company, they still need administrative assistants and lawyers and marketing people and salespeople. And it's not just, hey, I've been playing your games for 20 years, hire me. It's not like that. If you have the kind of work experience, have you worked in an office, even just as a secretary or doing anything like that, that's something that you could still make useful for a company like Square Enix. And I say this because I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago we were hiring for a community, like a events and community coordinator, and I was the one that got the stacks of interviews and got to hire that person. And there were people that would be interested in the position, and they would ask me, and I'd be like, I think you'd be great at it. Send me, fill out the application, because they have to go through that system. But there were people that didn't have a resume, or they just have never worked in an office before, or just things like that. So I guess where I'm going with this is just, if you have the relevant work experience, it's not so much as relevant like how involved you are with the video game side of things.
Gotcha. It doesn't always seem very intuitive, right? You think, oh, because I'm a big fan of the game, that gives me qualifications. I think that can be a perk, right? It's obviously, I remember when I noticed that you were a community manager and I saw your rank, I think you were on a video, a live stream, and you were showing your own account. And I was like, dang, Elytra's got like good units. Like, she actually plays the game. Like, she knows what she's doing. She knows what she's talking about. So it gave you credibility, I think, in that position. But you obviously had to have the qualifications to do that in the first place. And I think, is that kind of sounds like the point you're trying to make here is you have to have these relevant skill sets. As I said, a lot of viewers know that, I have a law degree. So you said they need lawyers. I'm like, oh shoot, well maybe I should look into that.
Right.
But you have to have that experience.
It's like it's a company first and video game associated second.
Right, exactly. Company, and then the video game happens to be the product. And of course, it does give you an advantage if you're very familiar with the product or you're a user yourself, especially with mobile games, because that's still a very niche area in the gaming industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, once you got into Square Enix, I know a lot of the community has had questions for a long, long time about kind of the chain of command or the division of responsibilities between Square Enix, Gumi, and Aleem. Could you explain, to the best of your knowledge, kind of how that structure works or who's responsible for what? We really need to know where to point our pitchforks when we're upset. And it's Gumi, I feel like, has kind of taken the brunt of it as just like the generalized, amorphous evil entity. But I would really like to know, how does that structure work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know there is a lot of confusion about that, and people use FFBE and Gumi interchangeably when they're referring to the global version. So I can only speak for the global version because, aside from a few meetings that I was invited to, I did not work directly with the JP team. So it is more of a collaborative process than people realize. That it is Square Enix and Gumi that are involved for the management of the global version. So in the global version, Gumi manages the operations. So they're the ones that keep the game running. They manage the FFBE support, and they also manage the Facebook and Twitter for the English, Korean, and Taiwanese channels. So when you file a support ticket, it gets handled by Gumi, and they summarize that in reports that are shared with Square Enix. And what Square Enix does is they manage the marketing and the live events and also collabs and the videos on YouTube. They write the scripts for that. So those promotional videos where you saw the FFBE team meeting Katy Perry, those were Square Enix employees. And as far as actually, I guess as far as the pitchforks, I don't. I'll get back to that point later. So Hiroki is the one who has the final say on things, and he works on the Square Enix side, but he's very involved with everything. The reports that I would put together and translate, I sent it directly to him, like his email, and he read them very closely, like every time. He is the type of leader that takes everybody's opinions into consideration, like his own team, but also the communities. Like he really wanted everybody to be able to weigh in. And I do also want to mention that what I'm talking about here, it's actually not like some of this was shared during the FanFesta in Long Beach in 2018. There was a dev panel where they did put up an org chart and they talked about, who does what. So at the very top of it is Kei Hirono. He's the one that is in charge of everything FFBE. People kind of say, oh, he's just the producer of the Japanese version. It's like, yeah, but he's also in charge of everything. So he is still involved with the global version as well. And that's why you see him at the live stream events and, the fan festas, is because this is still he's in charge of everything. But for day-to-day, Hiroki manages a global version. And I also want to say Gumi, as far as Gumi's involvement, I have a ton of respect for Gumi because they are the ones that are really in the community, and not just Reddit, but I saw them everywhere. They're the ones who are also very devoted players. Like Shali is a great example of one. She works on the Gumi side, but there are a few others as well. And even before I started working for Square Enix, I was friends with them because that's how involved they were with the communities. The irony is that once I did work for Square Enix, I couldn't speak to them directly anymore because there's that chain of command, and you're not allowed to go around their boss to talk to them, like that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, and another thing is, I do want to point out. So I don't know if you remember that dev panel. It's uploaded to the official YouTube channel, by the way, if you ever want to go back and watch, which I highly recommend you do. It was really exciting because they did bring in a lot of the rock stars from the FFBE team, like from JP and global version, Square Enix and Gumi. Like a lot of them were on the stage talking about what they do. So it's really exciting. For example, Kazuko Shibuya, she was on there. She's the one who designs the pixel sprites, like going back all the way to the first Final Fantasy. And she was explaining her process and the evolution of her artwork, starting from the first Final Fantasy throughout the whole series, and then leading up to FFBE, and then the Katy Perry sprite. So I highly recommend you go watch that. But also, Shihao was on there, and he is the producer for the Gumi side, and he is does not get as much credit for what he does. Like an example would be, remember it happened a few times where the game went down because for iOS users, but the first time
I remember.
yeah,
35-hour maintenance.
The very first time it happened, it was like, what, over 24, it was like 27, 28 hours that it lasted. It was like a whole day.
It was bad.
Yeah, the whole day it was down.
Ruined my login streak, Elytra. Right. It ruined it.
Yeah, and then the raids too. It ruined if you invested a lot to be maintain your rank in the raid, you lost that too. I know people were upset, but Shiha was the one that pulled an all-nighter, like because we didn't know when the game would come back up or when it would be available, and he was the one that stayed up and did not sleep, so the rest of us could sleep.
Wow.
So, and he's on that dev panel too. So I just recommend you. I mean, if you want to go back and watch it, it is on the official YouTube channel, and you can see more of the people that are involved.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good advice. I was there at the Long Beach Fan Fest, and I remember that panel, and I remember specifically them talking about Fryevia's chaining capabilities and how they unintentionally gave her divine ruination frames, I think they said, and then they realized that maybe it was too late to change it, and so they just left it there. That's remember because I remember it was kind of a funny moment where they were, kind of making fun of themselves. But I think you're right. I think fans tend to have short memories on the good things, and the podcast members are no exception, right? We since we do a new one every week, it seems like every week there's some new criticism that we can launch towards the producers, but ultimately, I mean, there are people behind these jobs that really do care, and it's nice to hear from you who worked there and who worked with these people, that not only those people care, but also the producer, that he's listening to the community, because I think at points there have been times where we felt that always hasn't been the case. But I also remember at FanFesta watching Hiroki on his off times, like he would get out his phone and start playing FFBE. It's like, I don't know why I didn't expect that, but he's invested in his own game. I don't know how big of a whale he is, but it seems like he definitely cares about the product. So that's nice to hear.
Yeah, he is. I mean, not just FFBE, but he is. I really enjoyed working for him. That he is somebody who really he comes off as being a very warm leader, like just a lot of empathy, and it's rare to see that in a somebody who is like your boss, but also just to see that in the video game industry, because there are some producers, I don't want to point out any specific names, but there are some producers that just want to focus on the game, and they're not comfortable going to fan events or interacting with the fans and walking through the crowd to shake people's hands and say hello. So I feel like FFBE is very lucky in that regard, that we do have somebody who cares. There were some times when, we would get some inquiries, or I would see somebody posting in the community, or somebody would send in a ticket, if there was a FFBE player who passed away or had some kind of a loss. He would take the time to write up a note and, send his regards. Like, he really showed that he cared.
That's really cool to hear.
Okay, so it's obviously was a very enjoyable, rewarding position, but there was definitely going to be some tough times too. So what were some of the bigger issues or particularly tough events to deal with for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there were several times when the community would be very upset about something, and I truly believed that if they just had more transparency on the situation, they wouldn't have been as mad. Like, if they actually had the what really happened kind of facts, then community is intelligent and they would understand. And I can't really go into specific details, but some examples would be the magnification gesture chaining. Remember when we had that app update, and then Android users couldn't chain anymore, and they there was a whole bunch of posts, people saying FFBE is biased against Android users, a lot of stuff, and people were just upset because they could not perfect chain anymore. So that's one example. Another example, is when the Apple version, when nobody could actually update it, and only Apple users had that emergency maintenance. And then the thing with the whole Esther when she was released, it's It's like,
Oh,
you know,
man.
if I were allowed to really share what happened, I don't think the players would have been as mad. And I mean, just some more clarity, and it wouldn't have to be such a big deal. But what the deal is that there is this sense of, like, you know, they don't want to sound like they're making excuses, and so they don't want to say, you know, this is what happened. This is why it happened this way.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think my biggest criticism of the producers of the game has always been that lack of communication, that when things like that happen, they don't tell us what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. There's times where they'll do something great and they don't tell us. Like, something will show up in an update and there's no word about it. And then, like, a couple days later, someone on Reddit will be like, oh, by the way, they just added this stuff and they didn't tell us. And also vice versa, right? They'll do stuff that they don't tell us the reasons why. Like the 3 examples you mentioned, I think were big ones in the community. The chaining and the iOS. I wasn't mad at the game. Like, I was mad that I couldn't play, obviously, because I was an iOS user, and I think I had logged off last on like an Android, or I don't remember what happened, but I couldn't get in. And I feel like the community wants that clarity, right? I feel like the community always wants that clarity, but it wasn't provided. And so I'm wondering, is that the producer's decision of that kind of communication restriction? Because it sounded like you said it was more of a frustrating thing for you guys as employees, that you couldn't explain yourselves or couldn't give that clarity. Why not? Like, why isn't there that clarity?
I would say that it's because the organizational structure makes it difficult to address those issues quickly. And so I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about, how, you know, there should have been more communication, but the result of that, like when I'm pushing for more communication, is that we had the whole working hard issue and unofficial sources. You know, so like, yeah, you know what I mean, right? So I would propose, like, okay, we need to address this. Here is what I propose we say. And I would type up the copy, you know, because I know exactly the right words to use. Like, okay, this is what they want to hear. This is what is safe to say. Can we approve this? And so I would send that to the team. And then, because I was working in a different time zone, I worked out of the LA office, and I would have to send it to the team in Japan. And then they would read it and be like, well, okay, we want to change a few things, but we don't have time to send it back to Olivia, and that's my real name, by the way, and you know, send it back to her, and, you know, do this whole back and forth to get it right, and then translate it to all the different languages, and then post it in time. Like, there was a whole time restraint, so it was just very hard. And they would basically, you would have a Japanese native speaker try to write it out. And of course, working hard makes perfect sense in Japanese. Like, it's a whole culture behind that. Even the way that they start an email off. You know, dear Elytra, thank you for your hard work, blah, 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 blah. That's just a salutation in an email. You know, so it's different. The perception is different. But you would have somebody making the edits or writing the letters in Japanese and then translate that to English. And sometimes it just wouldn't it wouldn't sound right, but there just wasn't enough time to really review it and get it nailed perfectly and get everybody's input before it had to be sent off in order to be included in the game, because even Gumi would need time for the translation, but even just to put it into the game so that it could be like uploaded quickly.
Sounds like a lot of kind of red tape in order to do that.
Yeah. And so another, like, going back to Dream's question about some of my frustrations is that, you know, sometimes, well, okay, here's one thing. Remember one of my first initiatives as a community manager was to start those feedback threads, because I wanted to open up the lines of communication. Yeah, that was a hot mess. Because what happened is that people would give me the feedback, but then like a month later, they're like, hey, what happened? We gave you all the feedback. We're not seeing anything. And it's like, okay, it's only been a month. It took me like 2 weeks just to go through all the feedback and like compile it all and organize it and then translate it. Like, have the translators work on it. So and then, I mean, it takes time for the team in Japan to schedule the meetings to go over it. So it takes weeks before we can even have the chance to look at the feedback and talk about it and discuss, is it possible? Because they have to have back and forth with the developers too. Like, is this something that we could implement?
Yeah, and unfortunately, on the community's timeline, they're thinking, I asked you yesterday, why is it not here today?
Well, I think the community was actually very reasonable. I mean, giving like a month, like I think that's reasonable. But again, yeah, they don't have the transparency into the fact that because Square Enix and Gumi, we're talking about multiple offices in multiple time zones and multiple countries. Like, you think about how, like, even just if you have a family of 4 or 5, like the kind of communication breakdowns that can happen. It's like, oh, I thought he told you this. No, he didn't. Like that kind of thing. But then expanded to a company that has that many people like spread out. That's
like a game of corporate telephone.
I mean, we've gotten familiar with time zone issues with just 6 people in 4 places.
Yep.
Right.
I was going to say,
it must be even worse with that.
Podcast itself is hard to schedule.
Yeah. But I mean, just speaking of like the transparency thing and the community's response, like some people will obviously never be happy sort of no matter what you respond with just because it's happened. So do you have any picture on like how the FFBE community compares to like communities for some other comparable games?
And this is probably biased because it was my community, but I love the FFBE community. That I think that they're wonderful. That one thing is that even when, like, at the height of the salt, maybe some of the, I don't want to say the worst, but some of those moments, like the hardest moments that we had, where I was really feeling the community's frustrations. Like, even during then, if some new player came along and said, hey, I just downloaded the game and I don't know what to do, can you help me? Tons of people would be jumping in, like, hey, welcome to FFBE, it's a great game, you're going to love it, here are some links to resources, here's my friend code if you need to add me, just tell me what unit you want me to set up. Like, that's something that was universal across all of the FFBE communities, not just Reddit. Like, you would see it on Discord and Facebook and Brave Exvius forums. Like, just tons of willingness to help out the new players. And that's something that I see in FFBE and maybe not so much in other games.
That's really cool to hear. I've always felt the community has been one of the strongest reasons I've played for so long, and many people have played for so long because of that excitement. And I would say, from a fan perspective, I think it's better to have passionate fans than apathetic fans, right? I mean, like, you don't want people just not caring, and FFBE people really care. I mean, really care. And often, to our own detriment. But I'm glad to hear that there were positive things even within the frustrations. You mentioned, I had a question. You mentioned the time it took just to even translate like the community feedback. So I wanted to see, like, on a daily basis, what would your job responsibilities look like as a community manager?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question, too. I would start off in the morning.
There's only good questions here.
I know, right? Only good questions. I would start off in the morning, catching up on my notifications, reading, my Reddit and my Facebook and Brave Exvius. Like, alerts would go off all throughout because, it's a global game. So I would be reading, catching up on that, just on my way to the office. And then once I got to the office, that's when I would have a chance to sit down, take a closer look at what I needed to. I would watch YouTube videos because I felt like it was important for the team to know how our influencers, how were Clayik and Howl and Evil Laughter, how were they talking about the game and the units? Like, were they telling people to pull or telling them not to pull, or even just their thoughts, like their reactions to things like unofficial sources, or just it was important for them to hear their voice. So I would watch those videos and summarize what they said and actually include quotes as well. I would, if I had time, I would check Twitch to see who was streaming. I like to drop in whenever I could to say hi. And I really tried to be everywhere. I'm in over 50 Discord servers. I would check in on GameFAQs. yeah, I would check in on GameFAQs because that's actually where I started before I found Reddit or the Brave Exvius forums or Facebook. I checked GameFAQs first because I really only knew GameFAQs as like the community, but then I started branching out. So I really tried to be everywhere, but also I spent a lot of time in office meetings. The Square Enix is that type of work environment where they have a lot of meetings, and they'll even have meetings about meetings, you know, that type.
Nice.
Very much into the whole like planning, communication type of thing. And then I did a lot of traveling too, not just for, I mean, of course you saw that I did those meetups. I traveled a lot for those, but even just the events, like video game events, you know, PAX or you know, like Gamescom or E3, all of those that I traveled for.
It sounds like, honestly, a lot of fun, but also a lot. Just a lot, a lot to do.
Yeah, it was a lot. And then I think because I was coming from the angle of playing FFBE and managing the community like as a hobby, so it was a little harder for me to draw the line. You know, like I couldn't just come home from work and then stop working for the day, especially like with the, you know, if there'd be the reset that would introduce bugs and it'd be like 2 or 3 in the morning when I was hearing about the bugs, and then I would be like messaging the team to let them know so they could address it right away. So it was just yeah, it was very intense.
I know the community definitely appreciated those meetups and the videos that you had done. Those were really cool. So I know we were appreciative of that. 50 Discord servers though, like I moderate just one with a bunch of other people, and it's way too much. It's way too much. But so that's cool to hear that you got to do all those things, and meetings about meetings. That sounds like every corporate office in America too. So
Right.
nothing worse. But I think going back just a little bit to the timeline of making changes to the game, I think one of the frustrations that the community is often pointed to is that when you get those bug alerts at 2 a.m. or even beneficial bugs, right? Like, you know, a free poll that lets you get 2 free polls instead of 1 or something like that.
Right.
I felt like the game was always really good about knocking those out as soon as it could. But
Yeah.
there's other games that have been long-standing. Like, I know the friends list thing. The friends list issues have been ongoing since the beginning of the game. The arena bug, where you'll go to enter an arena battle and it'll something like the companion has changed something. It sends you back to the main menu and it logs you out of your account, and then it resets all your settings if you log back in. Like,
Yeah.
that bug has been there for years, and those things don't get changed sometimes. Like, those things still exist today. And I know for a fact that you've like talked about these issues. So how do those things, like, how does that priority list work? Like, what things take priority over other things? Like, and why have some of those smaller bugs maybe not been addressed, or in your opinion?
Oh, so I can't really speak on the priority side of things because I wasn't the one making the decisions on that. But I would say some of those bugs, it was even just, in my experience, I noticed I would try to point out the bugs that it looked like they just weren't even aware of. And the friends list bug was one of them. And that was one where it's one thing, like, because I know people would submit tickets to the support team to explain like about the, you know, those bugs, but I feel like it helped when I would have specific examples, and I reached out to a few of my friends who I know had it, and because I would look for what they had in common and try to guess, like, I think this is what's happening. And I would work with the project manager from the Square Enix side, and then that would actually they would really like push harder. We need to investigate this. So I don't know. I feel like the bugs, we were coming at it from 2 different angles. You know, Gumi could receive it from support, and then I would try to flag the ones that I saw were really high priority. Now, the ones that I know, like, the community feels like, you know, the ones that are beneficial bugs, like that, those are things that I think, like, they want to fix right away because they really do impact the balance of the game. Like everything that they do with how much lapis they give away, what items they give away, like that's all planned in advance. And they really they take like when they plan in their roadmap, like this is what's going to be offered, but also like this is what we're going to try to sell, like for the monetization side of things. Like that's why they had to be really careful, like what players were allowed to get. An example of that would be when I would do my community streams and I would want to give away things like, if you come, then like if I have this many viewers, we can give you this stuff. But even that, like, required a lot of approvals, because then they had to take into consideration, do we have room to give away that extra stuff? And
I'm sure you guys have like some sort of internal calculations because you're managing that game economy in a sense. If we have someone randomly hack our servers and give out 5,000 lapis to everybody, how will that affect
right.
Which actually happened once.
Yeah. But going back to like a bug
around it.
I don't know if you remember, there were a few threads on Reddit one time where people posted and they said that they logged in and they saw someone else's account.
Yeah.
And the people like the first post, people were like, "Nah, that's fake. That can't be happening." But there were like a couple of posts like that, and I just kept my eye on them. But then I saw on Facebook completely different players had the same issue and they posted about it. And so I contacted all of those players. I wanted to get to the bottom of it, and it turned out that was a bug that nobody else had noticed. And we got it fixed. It took a while, but we got it fixed. But it was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah, I wish I would have logged into someone's whale account and, been able to transfer some things, But that's funny that it seems like, there's always bugs in games, right? Every time you introduce something new in the game, and I have as little developer knowledge as anyone in the world can have, but even I know this, like anytime you introduce new stuff in the game, there's unintended consequences and bugs that can result. And I know you've got to try and catch those things as early as possible, and especially the ones that are going to break the balance of the game, I know have to be addressed sooner. I just feel like that's one of those things that clarity you were talking about, sometimes that overarching feeling of the community of, hey, they're happy to fix things that benefit us, but not things that don't benefit us, has been pervasive in the community for years. And I know you guys have tried to counterbalance that, but that actually leads me to just a small question before I move on to another kind of topic. But does that feedback ever, does it ever like hurt, or do you ever feel like it's unfair? You know what I mean? Do you feel like that's not true, or that's not fair?
No, because I always, like you mentioned earlier, I always saw it as, when the players are upset, they're coming from a place where they really care about the game and they want to see it succeed. They want to see that, the money they're spending on the game is actually going towards somewhere. And I think a lot of the frustrations that they're expressing could be alleviated if there was just more communication from the FFBE team. Like if they would just say, hey, like, we're working on this and this and this, and that's why we can't work on this and this and this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that needs to happen, and it hasn't really happened. I mean, I feel like there's been small steps of progress in that department, but ultimately that lack of clarity has caused, has caused a lot of distrust, or has caused a lot of, reasons that people are left to think for themselves as to the reasons why things are happening, rather than actually having the facts.
Always dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's usually to the detriment of the company, right? Because people are always going to try and assume the worst rather than the best.
Yeah, just like how when iOS, those problems with the game not being available on iOS, and people were speculating that it's because, FFBE was refusing to include the pull rates, and Apple was like onto them. It's like, no, that's not what happened.
Right.
Yeah, it leads to a lot of sort of misdirected blame and stuff, and people will always then remember the bad more strongly than the good as well.
Right. But I mean, I wouldn't hold it against the players at all, because I know, like, okay, this is because we're not communicating enough. There's not enough, if everybody just had a chance to understand the reasons why things are happening, then there'd be more. There wouldn't be so much of this frustration and guessing and blaming.
Yeah, you'd think that would be a motivating factor for them to actually communicate, but so far it's like it drives me nuts because it hasn't led to ultimately the type of communication that we really want.
Yeah, it's I mean, I was really trying for it when I was there. I really tried. So.
Well, I know I've heard from people on both sides that there's frustration about that and they wish it could change. So I do know that there's employees of these companies that feel the same way. So it's nice to hear that from you, that was an issue you guys saw.
Yes. And something too is like, I mentioned that when we were hiring for that community coordinator position, and I remember seeing some candidates, like really strong candidates that were coming from other gaming companies, and they, would give me examples, because I would ask them, well, if you were in this type of situation, how would you handle it? And they would give like excellent responses, because they're like, based on my experience, this works. And I was thinking, yeah, that you're totally right, but Square Enix, it wouldn't work for the way Square Enix is set up. Just a little bit more conservative with the communications.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does sound like there's a lot of sort of hidden difficulties behind like implementing those communication things. Lots of different parts that it has to go around and be approved by and whatnot.
It's that, but also just it's like the part of the work culture, not wanting to sound like they're making excuses, or sometimes just feeling like it's safer to not talk about things at all.
Yeah. And ultimately that's been disappointing, but I understand the reasons behind it, So let's get on to maybe less depressing topics.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We've gotten in the weeds here, but I think it is
got the heavy stuff out.
Yeah, but it has been on a lot of people's minds, and especially mine and other podcast members. It's something that we've harped on before, and it's nice to hear these answers. I think these are really instructive. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So I actually, as a fan of FFBE and not as a community manager, I wanted to ask you, what was your let's say, what's your favorite unit so far in the game?
Wow, my answer is always changing. I would say
that's good.
Yeah, no, well, it's just there have been so many units. So for a long time, like early on, like I really liked Veritas of the Dark. And this is early. I used him to defeat Marlboro. Back when Marlboro was the hardest.
Wait, as a support, right? As a dark support.
Exactly, as a support unit, because then he could do like damage mitigation and the dark resistance. Like, this is awesome. But it's just he was the most well-rounded. Like, I loved his sprite and then his backstory, and it's just and the purple. Like, so he was one of my first favorites, and I think I answered a lot of when people would ask me that early on. I would say, yeah, Veritas of the Dark. It's my favorite. But then now, like looking back, I really love Olive. She was my first unit to hit over 1,000 attack. Like, this is back when, nobody else had really hit 1,000 yet. And I had saved up all of my Trust Moogles and got her TMR instantly. Well, I would have even gotten her sooner, but I remember the game was down, like, because so many people were trying to log into the game, so it was hard just to go in and pull for Olive because I couldn't get into the game. But I got her, and then I TMR'd her right away. And because people didn't believe me that I had saved up my Trust Moogles, because back then Trust Moogles were just super rare, like we did not get that many at all.
Yeah.
And I'd been saving for like months, and I TMR'd her right away, got Sparky. And then she hit 1,000 attack, and I was just so proud of that. That's like one of my favorite achievements early on, like 3.5 years ago. So oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was a little surprised to hear though that you just didn't get gifted Olive just for working for Square Enix. Like, what the heck? Like, where's your employee benefits?
So no, they don't do that. So I played from my personal account. And I would still have to pull like anyone else. but also if any time that they would send specific units or items to an account, it would always be for a dev account. For example, if we were setting up the iPads at FanFesta or even at the booth at PAX West, it would be from a dev account, and those would be the ones that would be like the fake whale accounts.
So if you just had really bad luck on a specific banner, you couldn't like talk to someone and be like, could you just, slide that into my, gaming DMs and just, let me have this unit, please. I really like it.
No, I didn't want to do that. So I actually was allowed to make like maybe a small purchase every month, just a little bit, not a lot. So not enough to like meet, fulfill my gaming habits. But I was allowed to, just if I wanted to expense a purchase here and there. My direct boss, he wasn't actually on the FFBE team, but my direct boss that I reported to did allow that for the mobile team, not just me. So I worked in the mobile team, by the way, this department out of LA. So everybody on that team, like we were allowed to, if we wanted to make a small purchase on our mobile games, we were allowed to expense that. But other
business expense.
I know like other departments, they didn't get that kind of a benefit. So I didn't want to like rub it in their face or really brag about it, because it's just a small perk.
That's funny. That's why I kind of figured you guys wouldn't get much, if anything at all, but I had to ask.
Yeah, no, Chow, and it's funny because Chow actually was one of the units. I pulled so hard to get Chow and only got one of him in the end, but I wanted him. I grew up with a Chow Chow, like that was our family dog, like same color. So I was like, I need this. And I ended up pulling even more clouds. I think I had like 6 or 7 clouds. I ended up with more clouds than Dire. Like, that's how hard I pulled.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Must have been the envy of Shally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Shally wanted all the clouds. What's funny though? I feel like a lot of us got into FFBE because of that nostalgia. For you and the Chow, right? It was like that was your childhood. Your family dog, and for a lot of us, the games that we grew up playing, especially from Square Enix, or maybe the collabs that Square Enix brought into FFBE, would kind of keep us, excited. So I want to ask, maybe what were some of your favorite games growing up, or what games do you have nostalgia for now?
Oh yeah, Secret of Mana is one of mine. That's the first game that I've been playing video games since I was really young, like probably 5 or 6 years old. But the first game that I actually beat on my own, like on my own initiative too, not just because my brother was dragging me into it, it was Secret of Mana. Oh wait, actually no. First RPG I beat was Faxanadu on the NES.
Oh damn.
But no, Secret of Mana is the one that even like when I hear the music, just brings back the feels. So I loved that collab. I loved Randy, and
that's awesome.
Yeah. Chrono Trigger, of course. So I want a Chrono Trigger collab just as much as anybody else. Trust me.
They keep telling us it's not going to happen.
It always comes up. Every single feedback thread. When are we getting a Chrono Trigger collab? Even though it's been addressed, but without fail, it always comes up.
Something's never
Earthbound is another favorite of mine, and then of course like Metroid on NES.
All the Zoomers listening to us are like, "What? I don't know any of these games."
Oh no!
But I remember playing Gunsmoke on the NES as a little kid.
Oh.
And the Zelda, like I also remember playing Secret of Mana, and I remember being really frustrated with that game when I was a little kid, because I remember right in the beginning you get to this battle where you fight some dragon like on this castle bridge. I don't remember. This is like super vague memory. But I would always get worked by this dragon. And it was at the time, like, you remember you go to the video game store and rent a video game for the weekend, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I rented Secret of Mana, and I remember taking it back and having been defeated by it too many times. So it's funny though. Those are the nostalgia games that kind of bring you in. Yeah. So that's really fun to hear.
You mentioned I was always primarily Pokemon kid
Yes.
because I had just handhelds rather than consoles.
Oh,
Yeah, Pokemon collab when? Come on, that would be a killer
wow.
I had 900 units.
Oh my gosh, Stream. You're a fanatic.
I gotta collect them all.
I wanted to see what you thought about the FanFesta units, the designs, because Malphasy's been probably my favorite sprite that's ever been created in the game, and I really love her
Yes.
kit too. So I wanted to see if there were any FanFesta units, either from the first one or the second one, where we haven't got the units yet, that you enjoyed.
Oh, wow. I mean, I love them all. But I would say Malphasy's sprite, I have to agree with you there. I really love that and the animation. And did you have a chance to meet her at FanFesta? She was actually there. The person who created her, Enko.
I don't know if I got to talk to her, but I got to see like who she was, and I saw her. She was always surrounded by people, so I didn't get to
Yes.
talk to her. But yeah, I
Oh,
did get to
yeah.
kind of see her at FanFesta.
Yeah, that's true. And then I remember I was at the FanFesta. So it was always exciting when they would announce the winners at the FanFestas. And when they announced her, this was at the New York FanFesta in 2017. And when they announced her as the winner and she was there, and they're like, "Whoa, she's actually here!" And they brought her on the stage. And
That's cool.
So that was amazing. But I say, like, I really like using Circe as well.
Yes,
Once I did start using
she was
Circe,
super
just-
underrated. Plus, she's a great fun name to try and pronounce, right?
Yeah.
I've heard everything on that one.
So there is a fun fact, though, which is that since I did lead my own community before I started working for Square Enix, that this was before I even knew that there would be a unit design contest. I kind of had my own mini contest just within my group, my Facebook group. I made up a story. I said, "Oh no, like our the world of Lapis is being overrun by re-rollers, and is this good unit?" like all of the kind of personality types that you see. And it's like and they need our help. They need the admins team help to come and save them, but you have to turn us into FFBE units so we can go into Lapis and help them. And so they people from the community designed me and the moderators as FFBE units, and one of them entered me as a unit in the official unit design contest, which was announced like right afterwards, and actually it got shortlisted. So if you look on the wiki, my sprite is on there. Like if you look for Olivia, it's on there, and it was shortlisted in Paris and got beaten by Circe. Like it made it to second place. And then
Wow.
Yeah, so that's just a fun fact.
The future that could have been.
Oh, let's see. FanFest of 2017, maybe. I think it was.
Yeah. The first
Oh my gosh, there it is. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, like me with my white cat and
That's pretty cool. Let's see. Is there anything that in FFBE that you're looking forward to? Are you still playing, for example?
So I do still play. I play very casually now, as many people do. So I still log in, and I say that like compared to before, I used to play a lot. Like I didn't want to miss anything, and there were even a couple times when I would clear out King Mog's shop because I would just farm the event that much. I would try to maximize all of my orbs and item world and do everything. But nowadays, it's just much more casual. I just kind of log in when I have time and farm a little bit, enough to keep up and still enjoy it. But I'm not like hardcore like I used to be. As far as what I'm looking forward to, oh wow, I would say it would have to be those new FanFesta units coming. And that's because
You want all the plushy mascot units, right?
yeah. Yes. Oh gosh, they were so cute. All of those submissions, and I really liked Lady Hero's submissions. By the way, I don't know if any of you follow her on when she was posting them on her Twitter.
She's great. Her art is amazing.
She's
great.
and she's just a super nice person.
Yeah.
So sweet, and I wish she does like so much. She gives away so much of her time in her artwork, like just out of her love for the community, and it's just but anyway, I had to mention that because she designed some really cute. That is my style, like the whole cute animal type of sprites, and she made a lot of those.
Yeah, it's always fun.
They nailed you with Chow, I'm telling you. That was the first one.
Right?
It got me.
Yeah. And Roberta, too. I just love how the dragon, like, is part of her animation.
More units with pets win.
That's true. Yeah, we need more. So, well, that's cool.
But
sorry,
one thing
you were gonna say
about... Yeah, I did want to mention that... Remember how when they first introduced the unit design contest, like the first one, and they said that they would have the winning units be like raid units, kind of like what they did for JP version. But then they ended up being these like mind-blowing meta 5-star base units, and nobody saw that coming. But that was a risk that Hiroki took. That he made that decision to release the unit design winners because like as 5-star base units instead of the raid rewards, because he wanted them to be really good for the game. That he really appreciated that people put in the effort to design such great units, and he just wanted to make them good, but the only way to do that would be to have them be 5-star base units and not just like a free unit that you would get from raid summons.
I will say that was probably one of my top 3 favorite things about FFBE is when we got those units as actual awesome units. So I'm glad that Hiroki was behind that, and kudos to him.
Yeah, I'd say that definitely
that was
paid
huge.
off.
Yeah.
Well, and apparently they're going to do it again. Maybe they'll be NV bases. So that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
So I know you've kind of moved on from, you're no longer the community manager, but I wanted to see what you're doing nowadays.
Yeah, so I did move back to my hometown, and I work in healthcare now, not in video games. So I know I'm an outreach manager with a healthcare data company, and actually really enjoying it a lot. It's personally for me, it is nice to have that work-life balance again. And like I remember last year on Thanksgiving Day, that was when there was another iOS issue where people could not log in. And I just remember like thinking to myself, it's like, well, because I actually am an iOS user, so I was frustrated too that I couldn't get into the game. But I was also like, it's nice that it's a holiday and I can actually like have the day off. Because if I were still in at Square Enix, I would be like working all through the day. So
yeah, it would very much be a job that's sort of constant.
I think people do think that like, it'd be great to work in a game. It's like you work on FFBE all day and then you come home, sit on the couch, and you pull up your phone and go, wait a minute.
I know. Right?
Now I'm supposed to relax with FFBE, but I feel like I can't anymore. You feel like it interfered with your ability to enjoy the game as much as you wanted? Or was it just kind of those inconveniences you mentioned?
It actually did not. I think when I moved back home, I did take a brief break from the game, but I jumped back into it. And then, I mean, if it weren't for COVID, I would still be having meetups. Just not, I mean, unofficial, of course, but just because I love the people that I met. I love bringing people together. I love that. Like you said before, the community is what keeps a lot of people interested in the game. That there were times when it's just like kind of rinse and repeat. Raid King Mogavin, raid King Mogavin. When are we getting new content? Raid King Mogavin. And it was the community, just how much fun that we had with each other that kept us like still with the game. And so I would have done more of that. I did get to host one towards the end of last year in Chicago and had more planned for this year. But then, with the lockdown, just didn't want to take the risk of that. But I mean, hopefully one day, when it is safer, if it ever is again, I would like to continue having those meetups.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Those were really cool. I didn't get to go to any personally, but I did get to go to 2 different fan fests, and it's so cool to meet other people that play the game.
Exactly.
So you mentioned with the COVID thing, you must have developed your skills at making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and also getting takeout more than ever, right? So
Right.
I wanted to ask you, peanut butter fan, are you a peanut butter fan? And if so, crunchy or smooth?
Oh gosh, I love both. I mean, I am an equal opportunity peanut butter lover. um,
We support peanut butter equality.
And Barros actually had this question, so I decided to let him ask one question, and that's pineapple on pizza, great or terrible or meh?
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah, especially with some ham. Yes.
Nice. Take that, Barros.
Thanks. This one's, I assume from Cotton, might also be Barris. On a rating from 0 to Swole, how swole is Yoshikiri?
Oh gosh, it's hard for me to say because I don't have him yet, so I can't.
Yes, you know, the swollenness is in the eye of the beholder, and if you're not beholding them, you can't judge.
Or is it
There we go.
Dang it. Dream, I was looking for a pun and I couldn't find it, so
That
thank you very much,
is,
Dream.
yes, that's perfect.
Nailed it. Well, it's been so enjoyable having you on the podcast, Elytra, and I've been butchering your name for years, so I'm glad we know it's now Elytra. We've, this is actually my last episode, and so I wanted to make sure we went out on a pronunciation, battle. I think that's just perfect for me. So, yes, thank you for providing that for us. But thank you for everything you did for the community and continue to do, even in an unofficial capacity. I know we've really appreciated it, and I'm grateful for the insights you've provided to us today. And I think a lot of other people will see that as well, and hopefully it will produce a little bit more understanding between the game producers and the community, because there are people that are passionate on both sides of that issue.
Yes.
And that want to see it succeed. So it's really nice to know that the producers feel the same way. So thank you so much. And if people want to continue following you, or maybe they want to join your Facebook community group, is there ways that we can keep in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, I still am around. You're always welcome to reach out to me on Discord or Twitter or Reddit. But yeah, thank you again for inviting me. I'm glad that we finally got this. I know we've been talking about it for a while, so I'm glad to finally be here and be a part of this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really
Thank you
enjoyable.
so much.
Thanks.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Appreciate Elytra coming on, and look forward to more good content next week. Talk to you soon.